Hi, this is Mrs. Chavez. Today we're starting section 2 of the Great War, where Europe plunges into the war. By 1914, Europe was divided into two rival camps. One alliance, the Triple Entente, included Great Britain, France, and Russia. The other, known as the Triple Alliance, included Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. Austria-Hungary's declaration of war against Serbia set off a chain reaction within the alliance system. The countries of Europe followed through on their pledges to support one another, and as a result, nearly all of Europe soon joined in what would be the largest, most destructive war the world had yet seen. In response to Austria's declaration of war, Russia, Serbia's ally, began moving its army toward the Russian-Austrian border. Expecting Germany to join Austria, Russia also mobilized along the German border. To Germany, Russia's mobilization amounted to a declaration of war. So on August 1st, the German government declared war on Russia. Russia looked to its ally France for help. Germany, however, didn't even wait for France to react. 2 days after declaring war on Russia, Germany also declared war on France, and soon afterwards, Great Britain declared war on Germany. Much of Europe was now locked in a battle. By mid-August 1914, the battle lines were clearly drawn. On one side were Germany and Austria-Hungary. They were known as the Central Powers because of their location in the heart of Europe. Bulgaria and the Ottoman Empire would later join the Central Powers in hopes of regaining lost territories. On the other side were Great Britain, France, and Russia. Together they were known as the Allied Powers, or the Allies. Japan joined the Allies within weeks, and Italy joined later. Italy had originally been a member of the Triple Alliance with Germany and Austria-Hungary. However, the Italians joined the other side, after accusing their former partners of unjustly starting the war. In the late summer of 1914, millions of soldiers marched happily off into war, convinced that the war would be very short. Only a few people saw the horror ahead. One of them was Britain's Foreign Minister, Sir Edward Grey. Staring out over London at nightfall, Grey said sadly to a friend, "The lamps are going out all over Europe. We shall not see them lit again in our lifetime." Facing the possibility of a war on two fronts, Germany had developed a battle strategy known as the Schlieffen Plan, named after its designer, General Alfred Graf von Schlieffen. The plan called for attacking and defeating France in the west, and then moving quickly to the east to fight Russia. The Germans felt they could carry out such a plan because Russia lagged behind the rest of Europe in its railroad system, and they would take longer to supply its front lines. Nevertheless, speed was vital to the Schlieffen Plan. German leaders felt that they needed to win a quick victory over France. And early on, it appeared that Germany would do just that. By early September, German forces had swept into France and reached the outskirts of Paris. A major German victory appeared just days away. But on September 5th, the Allies regrouped and attacked the Germans northeast of Paris in the valley of the Marne River. Every available soldier was thrown into the struggle. When reinforcements were needed, more than 600 taxicabs rushed soldiers from Paris to the front. You can see a picture of them there in the screen. After 4 days of fighting, the German generals gave the order to retreat. Although it was only the first major clash on the Western Front, the First Battle of the Marne was the single most important event of the war. The defeat of the Germans left the Schlieffen Plan in ruins. A quick victory in the west no longer seemed possible. In the east, Russian forces had already invaded Germany. Germany was going to have to fight a long war on two fronts. Realizing this, the German High Command sent thousands of troops from France to aid its forces in the east, and meanwhile, the war on the Western Front settled into a long stalemate. By early 1915, opposing armies on the Western Front had dug miles of parallel trenches to protect themselves from enemy fire. They set the stage for what became known as trench warfare. In this type of warfare, soldiers fought each other from the trenches, and armies traded huge losses of human life for pitifully small land gains. Life in the trenches was pure misery. The men slept in mud, washed in mud, ate mud, and dreamed mud, one soldier wrote. The trenches swarmed with rats, fresh food was non-existent, and sleep was nearly impossible. The space between the opposing trenches won the grim name of no man's land. When the officers ordered an attack, their men went over the top of the trenches into this bombed-out landscape. There they were usually met with murderous rounds of machine gun fire. Staying put, however, didn't ensure the soldiers' safety. Artillery fire brought death right into the trenches. "Shells of all calibers kept raining on our sector," wrote one French soldier. The trenches disappeared, filled with earth, and the air was unbreathable. Our blinded, wounded, crawling, and shouting soldiers kept falling on top of us and died splashing us with their blood. It was living hell. The Western Front had become a terrain of death. It stretched nearly 500 miles from the North Sea to the Swiss border. Military strategists were at a loss. New tools of war, machine guns, poison gas, armored tanks, larger artillery, had not delivered the fast-moving war they had expected. All this new technology did was kill greater numbers of people more effectively. The battle on the Eastern Front. Even as the war on the Western Front claimed thousands of lives, both sides were sending millions more men to fight on the Eastern Front. The area was a stretch of battlefield along the German and Russian border. Here, Russians and Serbs battled the Germans and the Austro-Hungarians. The war in the East was a more mobile war than the one in the West. However, slaughter and stalemate were very common. At the beginning of the war, Russian forces had launched an attack into both Austria and Germany. At the end of August, Germany counterattacked near the town of Tannenberg. During the four-day Battle of Tannenberg, the Germans crushed the invading Russian army and drove it into full retreat. More than 30,000 Russian soldiers were killed. Russia fared somewhat better against the Austrians. Russian forces defeated the Austrians twice in September 1914, driving deep into their country. It was not until December of that year that the Austrian army managed to turn the tide. Austria defeated the Russians and eventually pushed them out of Austria-Hungary. Russia struggles. By 1916, Russia's war effort was near collapse. Unlike the nations of Western Europe, Russia had yet to be industrialized. As a result, the Russian army was continually short on food, guns, ammunition, clothes, boots, and blankets. The Allied supply of shipments to Russia was sharply limited by German control of the Baltic Sea, combined with Germany's relentless submarine campaign in the North Sea and beyond. In the south, the Ottomans still controlled the straits leading from the Mediterranean to the Black Sea. The Russian army had only one asset, its numbers. Throughout the war, the Russian army suffered staggering numbers of losses in the battlefield, yet the army continually rebuilt its ranks from the country's enormous population. For more than 3 years, the battered Russian army managed to tie up hundreds of thousands of German troops in the east. As a result, Germany could not put its full fighting force in the west. Germany and her allies, however, were concerned with more than just the eastern and western fronts. As the war was raging on, fighting spread beyond Europe to Africa, as well as to Southwest and Southeast Asia. In the years after it began, the massive European conflict became a global conflict, or a world war.